What's going on, everybody? Time for YouTube recap. Monster call day for us. Short to long was the program we were running as we posted here on the X for everybody. Oh, that's right. X doesn't let you zoom in anything. So we'll get into it in the big. So as we called right here, short out of the gate down to the weekly gap. That was mine. So you can see the sentiment. Anything under 491 and 9 cents down to 482.95. That was my short under to weekly gap fill. Big short target. And of course, nice GP on the way through. And then we actually called the long as well on a post saying after the weekly gap was filled at 482.95, we were going to go up to 500 and we were going to watch from there. We ended up selling a lot of 500 puts today on the SPY, ready for this upside. We got about $5,000 on these top step accounts right here on the grouping. Let's get into it. So the SPY, how did we do it? Well, we have an algo here, 3 a.m. stock open. So we got this pre-market guy. He was looking pretty good. 5-minute high low, like always that we do on the channel. So Fibonacci's up. Look for the rejection after the 1618. You got her pretty easy today. So we had this algo here. And of course we filled it. And that was the weekly gap. It couldn't have been any easier. So it came down, held the GP up to the 1618, failed it, down to the 100, down to the GP, to the weekly fill. What's the weekly fill? How did we predict that? Well, it was actually prior years here. Max weekly. We go back to here and you notice I'm a gap trader. Algorithms look at gaps. It is the most used system on every time frame that I teach, right? And if you notice, if you go back in time and you start looking at some of these gaps on the weekly, notice between 2020 and 2021, there was one weekly gap and it didn't even fill till next year. There was only 2 weekly gaps at 2019 to 2020, even with the pandemic. In recent times, there was one on 22 filled in 23, so on and so forth. We had one that filled same year right here in 23, but we had one little sneaker right here. And we talked about this in our long-term video. So I have recessionary targets down here because we are going to 440 in the 2026 recession. 421 will probably hit a lot of those targets, of course, later on coming in. Nothing goes in a straight line, but our final short target was a weekly gap. There are no such thing as weekly gaps left open. It is one of my biggest trade frequencies, right? We run that baby as much as we can. So if I put a level right there so we can see that again on the intraday, that's where we got it. It's a weekly gap, simple as that. Once the market started falling apart and didn't bounce, we sliced that 100 EMA like nobody's business. Once we break a level, we need to back test that level after hitting a major support. The major support is the weekly gap. The back test level is the 100 EMA. And you see that does come in very close to the top of the day. We're not quite done yet. I think we got lots of upside left. We might even fill this up today. So 523.79. So let's get into some of the intraday stuff. So I think we're going to be heading up. I put a final target on about 525.89 for the day. I'd be super impressed if it got up there. Very, very impressed. We have tariff news, all other countries folding. We had a little bit of fake news that did the sell down, that she went a little too fast from our gap push target. And we had some fake news coming out there for Bassett. And we'll see how the rest of that plays out. But so let's clean this chart up a little bit first. What we're going to do is we're going to take off those algos here that we did. Of course, we just left the weekly right here. So again, the whole pretense to the day, everything was developed off the weekly gap, okay? So if we put it structured right here, we see the overnight, we see the gap down open. We played that. We have a live video playing the 5 p.m. We did a solid couple thousand down there too. So we hit this right here after the hours. Today's pre-market hit it again, and then live tag hit it again. Live tags matter most. That's when gap fills actually occur. It does not matter if after hours or pre-market hits this gap level right here on the weekly. It is only live tag. So when I seen this break down and we seen the structure high, lower, low, obviously lower high formed and then cut down, we had a great sneaking suspicion that we were going to slam into the gap. And then I said long the gap, because obviously if you go back in time here, guys, and look at these weekly gaps, what happens after the fill? 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 weeks straight down. And look at this gap. Look at this gap the last time this happened. What is this? Look at this. Red, gap down, gap. See you later. When these gaps get hit, it is massive. So we talked a lot about longing, and that's why we said on X, I said, watch me call 170 points to the upside on ES right now. I might have said 140, regardless. I just wanted 500. I wanted to come back to the 5-2 candle we talked about last stream last night at 5 p.m. So once the weekly gap was filled, we were long all the way to 500. That was our call. That is 180 points on the ES. Then we got some more tariff news. And then they said it was fake and it slammed back down. So last but not least, it got real choppy. It's going to get choppy here. The day trade is done here. We're just chopping 500, obviously. But the secondary and the last trade I put for my group was a nice little one right here. Let's go over it. So we had a big 5 minute up, big 5 minute down, right? Imbalances there need to be filled and no tag GPs need to be filled. So for us, I like to fib out high lows of all time frames. Fibonacci is not if it is when going to work. It is when it is going to work. So when you fib out this bad mamba jamma right there, and then you notice these algo candles right here developing perfectly on our 1618, we had a sneaking suspicion we were going to come up and fill that GP, of course, right? So we called again long anything above VWAP to push up into the pocket here, into the GP, which we did. We called another 100 and some points after the VWAP into the golden pocket. Oh, 91. I wanted to see a full fill all the way up here, 130 some points again, but wasn't really what I was looking at yet. We were going to get that later on in the day, okay? So if I move this over to the right, and we notice here that this big old guy here has defended the golden pocket, and all you had to do is wait for 499 to become support, right? So it's been riding the 100 EMA, 100 EMA in the green, 100 EMA, broke back into the fib box. That's your signal to continue higher. Now, let's check some oscillation indicators here for us as we kind of get into the quick recap. Notice the MACD wasn't really ready for this reversal move quite yet either, because we had this huge news protocol with the tariffs and countries kind of folding into the United States, which obviously our GDP crushes there. So there's no reason that tariffs aren't going to work. So as it comes down to this 100 EMA bounce, 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 and up, we were just waiting for some of the oscillation indicators down here to kind of get with the program, as well as the VIX, which we'll go over in a second. So noticeably, we came down, down, down. The moving averages finally hit the zero MAC line, found support. And we were just waiting for that MACD support, pretty much just to recalculate until it gave us a signal to buy, and it did right here, right at 12. A lot of the times too, when we have big intraday moves like this and we fib them out, they play out for quite some time. So this one is pointed to the downside, and we hit the 1618 with those algos. We got back into the fib box. We even made it to the GP here. We're back in the GP right now. I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to range up again here and put in some good candles. So I'm going to try to get back tonight the best I can. Actually, I probably won't. I won't be able to. We have the family din-din here with the rents. So probably won't be able to stream the 5 p.m. up, and I really want to, but let's take a look at the daily chart here for what our conviction is for coming up next, okay? So the weekly fill was here, and you know me, when we do have a bunch of candles in a row here, we do need some tag back test, okay? And we put in, this is day 4. So what you want to do, like we always do, is we fib out the last trade day and we play off those fibs. And I've been screaming at you guys on our live trading sessions saying, don't take any trades unless it hits the fib. Okay, stop clicking a million buttons for any reason. If you're not a hyper scalper, then don't bother. Just wait till the levels tag. So let's take a peek at the intraday with the dailies on, okay? So this was the last trade day here, right? Huge gap down. We had a bunch of Bitcoin bearish, but it was all about this weekly, right? You name it, it was out there. So where would we have found that support? Well, right where the algos did. Look at 1618 is at 491.93. Again, this golden fib is what we always look for, is the last trade day. Must have missed the daily there. There we go. So last trade day right here, 4-4, coming into 4-7, right? We fibbed it, pointed it to the downside. So the second it recovered the 1618, it can head to the golden pocket, right? So whether it was news driven or not, it was still a very, very, very clean sectional hit. So let's take a peek. Brandon said the weekly was going to hit. Okay, perfect. Now look at this squeeze and consolidation. That was nuts. We said V reversal even right here. And it really took off with some news. Excuse me, obviously. So 1618 and anything above should have been your bullish narrative. Why? Well, we slammed up on this little news tariff piece, busted right into that golden pocket, and look at that short. Where did it stop out? What do I always tell you guys? Fibs high low. Stop messing around with anything else. Use simple price leveling in a VWAP. We could trade this stuff. Comes up to the GP, comes all the way down, breaks right to the 1618 algos. holds 1618, higher low again, as we said earlier, riding that 100 EMA. And now that we are inside the fib box, which again, if you look real close, see that blue line? We're very big on pre-market high lows here. And notice it broke over that pre-market high and defended that pre-market high area as support as well as we move back up to 525 even today or farther. I think we're going to get further squeezes here. The shorts are all done for the week. But again, we talked about that last week as well if we opened up and last night. So anything above 500, we're going to keep on track. So what's the prediction? Well, because the gold level works so well on our 1618, generally return to the 100, the GP, we have a chance to fill up the golden pocket. So your last trade of the day is holding the 100 fib and going, as we just said twice, to 525.90, right? Because that will fill up the daily candle last trade day. Full box. Whoops, that was a little low. Full box, right? From yesterday's low high. So again, that's a big one. So now that we're inside yesterday's lows, we have an opportunity to go to yesterday's highs. Will it happen by the end of the power hour here push? Probably, because it would be worst case scenario for us to try to trade it, to the upside after a run like this. So what's the prediction? Well, let's talk about it. As we come into some of these other areas where we need tags on the longer term candles, okay? So what are we going to do for tomorrow? Well, you guys are obviously going to take whatever today's highs and lows are, and you're going to push that up, and you're going to use these fibs as well. Your 100 over under is going to be big, but we'll be focusing on most likely 50 points to the upside on SPY, 500 points to the upside on ES. Why is that? Well, some of these other candles that respectively need some golden pockets and need some Fibonacci hits do still exist. What candle is most important? It doesn't really matter. They're actually both somewhat equally important. They're going to work out when, not if. Okay, so this double gap candle, gap 1, gap 2, right? So this gap above and below has one little fat candle in between. So this is going to be my favorite one to use right here for tomorrow. So I'm going to fib out that one high-low, and this is what I'm going to pay attention for tomorrow. Depending on where we close, we could actually get a pretty big push into the gap at the squeeze at the end of the day. But if we don't, we have two scenarios, okay? Let's go over both scenarios. The long scenario first. The dead cat bounce persists off this weekly gap, starts going up, and eventually, unfortunately, we are going to come back down. Now, when? Well, we'll day trade it as we see it. But where's this candle's opportunity? Well, it's going to be the 3618 for me. So 507.17 right here has to be a macro hold to push up to this 1618, okay? So the next coming days here, depending on where we close and where we see it, we're going to look for a long back up to fill this gap, and then we're going to look for the floater right here that has a gap above it and a gap below it. We're going to look for that golden pocket right there to tag in. Well, first we need to get to the 100 and the 1618 of the floater candle. So the 1618 is going to be targetable 1. So you have right here 507.17 as support. And your exit will be hopefully up there at the gap top, gap fill, 536.24. That's going to be for the week, okay? It's not going to be for directly tomorrow. It could happen tomorrow, sure, but that is what we're going to look for the week. What are we going to pair with that? Well, wherever high-low closes, and maybe it squeezes, maybe it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to fib out the candle like I always do. And right now, with today's current high and current low, let's say this day closes out and is done, it's closed. Well, we got a 618 directly on, right? Look at that, 3618 and 618, okay? That's an overlap. So that's going to become our major over-under zone for tomorrow. So regardless, doesn't really matter to us, regardless. If this thing wants to squeeze up and go bonkers, or if it just wants to chill up here and kind of leave us with room to run tomorrow, that would be best case scenario, actually. If it wants to run all day and close way up here, worst case scenario, and we'll trade it a little differently. But right now, the biggest point of interest is 507.17 to 507.44. You will be looking for continuation above or below, okay? Let's talk short scenario and why we still have short scenario for later on. Now, the weekly gaps are very large. We're going to go over to NQ here, and this is one of the bigger precursors for this short trade, okay? So I talked about this one about on our live videos and where I give you guys big predictions for further market conditions, right? And we talked a lot about this guy right here, and that is, the heck is this fib attached to? It's just a random, like there's supposed to be other numbers. Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry. So on the weekly here, we talked a lot about the 100 EMA and the gap, and we did this on a live session as well. This big old boy right here above 16K is a weekly gap. All weekly gaps fill. We talked about that this morning as well. Huge for our group. But as the recessionary target hits, as I showed you in the beginning of this video, and I've talked about it on X, if you give us a follow over there, we post some hints there as well. That'll be the big watch. So last week, okay, so watch this. We're going to do last week here. Fib at teal. That's what we do here. Over under 17,385.46. We hold this. We're moving into the golden pocket and back testing. The one thing that already stopped us is obviously the 100 EMA. Confirmation states once we break a level, which last week, the close, we broke through the 100 EMA. This week, we back tested it. Once you break a level like the 100 EMA, you need to back test it. That's what we call confirmation. That's confirmation of rejection, right? You broke it. So the first tag of back testing it will work opposite. So if I chart this off right here as the 100 EMA and I go into the intraday, it's going to tell me where resistance was going to come into the back test, right? Just so happens that squeeze was to the T perfect. Now, on the future side of things, you're going to see it very similar. It's got to hold the 100 fib of the weekly to move up to the golden pocket of the weekly. This is last week's low to last week's golden pocket, right? So that's what it's going to look like over hours at the 5 p.m. if we don't already squeeze up into this bad mamma jamma today, because of course we still have time. It's only 1 p.m. Power hour is about to start in an hour. So if this puts in a couple other candles here and all of a sudden gets another squeeze to match up to highs, we will end up at 18,399.01 at the end of today. And then we'll have to reassess our trade coming up because we'll just watch the closes after that. But the longer term, and I'll do a video on this most likely for the weekend if we don't get down here. Remember, weekly gaps always fill, and this is going to be on TOS only. Don't worry about TradingView and all the other platforms. Tasty Trade, Interactive Brokers, Thinkorswim. Nothing else is going to show you correct gaps or anything else. So just don't even worry about those data. Don't even trade on TradingView. It is useless unless you're doing anchor view apps. So this weekly right here is going to be the precursor of the fill. Okay, so we broke the 100. We pop up, and we have two decisions here. We got to come into the GP, come down for that weekly fill. Okay. Or we get a big dead cat bounce. We roll up to some of these other tags that we need. Now notice we have one little dude near all-time highs. He's a no tag GP. You see the indicator there telling us that we don't have any of the 50 or 3820 or 61.8 retracements there, right? And this one is done, and this one still has a 50 left on it. We still have some opportunity to come up here for the next lower high before we crash down into the 16,250. Now, remember, my recessionary targets are still here for 434.40. That's SPY. This is always the better traded market. We are coming down here for 2026 and after. I don't care how hard this bounces, even if it bounces to all-time highs. I will be shorting the crap out of this thing for the next 3 years into the 430. I am selling calls, whatever it ends up at the end of 25 and middle of 26, right around here. I will be selling calls forever and ever and ever. Most likely 600s. It seems like a fantastic number, and I'll see you guys at 440. I've mentioned this multiple times to my chat, but that is still the precursor. Now, the speed in which something gets to these levels, BQ, is going to be obviously on demand, right? You got to see the demand. You got to see the speed. You got to see the price action. There's not a whole lot we can do without seeing it on the screen. Poor people predict, rich people react, right? That's our saying here. So if we want to react to the chart, well, the chart's got to give us a reason to react. We got to come to a golden pocket to fail. We got to come up to that 10 SMA and fail. We got to come up to a lower high in structure and then break farther back to that downside. And then we'll get our targets all the way down here into the 15,000s for my recessionary targets. Okay. So that's a little snippet of the long term. I don't want to make it too long because these quick recaps are just for the fun on what we are capable of in our Discord. If you want to trade with us, I stream this stuff live every single morning, every morning that we're on. And last but not least, I did want to bring this up. I forgot. We are in weekly oversold territory. And on an abrupt move to the opposite side, so a counter trend move. If we go to the max weekly, every time there's a counter trend move and you go to the oversold, it's a hell of a bounce. It's just simple RSI too. I just forgot to mention that. I just wanted to bring it up here real quick. So from hot to cold, obviously that was the pandemic, but cold purchase, high to low purchase, high to 50 even purchase, high to low purchase. Okay. That RSI in the weekly is very good. You could literally trade, once every 5 years on that, but your whole, bet the house on it, you do fine. Not on the upside. It's always on the counter. So if you want to trade with us live, guys, links in the description. If you want to tune in for the next free YouTube video, great. If you want to win a free Top Step account, which I give out every Saturday during our live streams, shoot a comment, a like, and make sure you are subscribed, and I'll give you $50 cash just for tuning in on Saturday, potentially. All right, guys, see you then. Take care.